Isabella, if you want to take the lead while we wait for Matteo.
Okay. I saw that he said that there are also others in the waiting room, so maybe it's not only Matteo, but also other participants.
Maybe we can wait 1 more minute.
Just 1 more minute, otherwise we can start. Hi, Matteo. Can you hear us?
Isabella. Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. It seems that some other colleagues are going to join soon, so we can wait a couple of additional minutes, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
While we are waiting, shall I show some pictures from Romanville, or is it just as a pause breakout?
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, this is just outside of the facility, as you can see. I will move away. And outside there's a big bench that was built for the community to sit there as a part of the community. So this is Romanville in Paris. And well, we were there with a group from Amsterdam. Alexander, who was in the meeting, was there as well. And I couldn't take pictures without other people taking pictures. So this is the outside. This is the story in French about the table with all the food and all the green that's around it. Well, there's a sort of a creativity room, so to say, where they built different chairs from leftovers. And this is inside. It's I've got a better picture where you can see the view. You see, it's a very high building with different floors with stainless steel troughs where soil was in. It was compost, and different types of vegetables were grown inside this one. Well, the tomatoes were not doing so well, but it was the first part of it. It was a new grower, so we had to restart this winter again for how to get there. And there's no heating in the system. There is ventilation, of course, to get rid of the extra heat. And a lot of irrigation, but then with water, simply irrigation water, and all the fertilizer was supposed to come from these compost. In the basement, I didn't take pictures. In the basement, there's a huge mushroom farm as well. Over here, you can see the size of the project. And one of the ideas, but it was halted by COVID, is to start a restaurant in the community in Romanville. But some pictures of the controls and of a lot of manual control was still involved. And we are biased, of course, as a controls firm. But just to show you what's there. And then I'll stop sharing. So just to give you an impression of the Romanville one when I was there at the end of September. So not at high growing season, but at the end of the growing season.
Okay, thank you very much. And it was a nice impression. So it was a nice way to get started. I will, let's say, introduce myself and the other facilitators. So before getting started, so I would ask Giuseppina and Isabella to introduce themselves, saying a bit who you are and what are your skills and interests.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. Good morning, everybody. My name is Giuseppina Pennisi. I'm a junior assistant professor at the Department of Agricultural and Food Sciences at the University of Bologna. My expertises are related to urban agriculture in general, but specifically on growing systems adapted to the urban environment, specifically on vertical farming. In the last year, we started a pilot project within our department, and we built research facilities, vertical farming with the purpose for research and for education with students. And that's all.
Thank you, Giuseppina. Isabella.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Isabella Righini, and I work as a researcher at Wageningen University and Research in the group of greenhouse horticulture. So I mainly focus on crop production in high-tech, mid and high-tech systems, and also on the resource use efficiencies. I'm also involved in a European project, FoodE, with also other colleagues such as Giuseppina, Francesco, and Matteo. And in that case, the focus is more on urban agriculture. And in particular, we are following different pilot studies across Europe, following the design and the implementation. So, for example, Romanville, what has been shown by Jan before, is also one of the pilot study of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Isabella. And I'm Matteo Vittuari. So I'm an economist also at the University of Bologna at the Department of Agriculture and Food Sciences. I'm also contributing to FoodE, and within FoodE, I'm assessing the sustainability of the pilots that Isabella is coordinating. So, and assessing sustainability by applying a life cycle thinking approach where we are trying to integrate environmental impacts, economic impacts, and social impacts. So welcome to the seminar of today, and welcome to this breakout session in particular. And I'm sure that we are going to have many interesting insights and many interesting discussions within the next hour. So I will leave again the floor to Isabella and Giuseppina to outline a bit what we are going to do, and then we are going to, let's say, facilitate the discussion and to discuss together about the main items that we are going to see during the presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Matteo. So very briefly, we will start with some presentation from, let's say, with different presentation from cities, explaining some concrete examples on, let's say, policies on vertical farming and similar high-tech systems. After that, we will have a Mentimeter session with two questions that we would like to answer, and after that we will have an open discussion. So going back to the presentation outline, I would start with the first one, which is focusing on Brussels regions, and the presenter is Thomas Zullner. I hope this is pronounced correctly, and he works for the FarmTech Society. His presentation is actually combined with another presentation given by Tera Rolling and Jan Vestra, that are from the Sustainable Delta Foundation, and will explain their action in more than one cities around the world. So I would like to leave the floor to Thomas, and please tell me if you would like to share your screen or I should do it.
Okay. It would be helpful if you could share it.
Okay. Yes.
Hey, Radu.
Can you see it?
It's starting. Yep, there it is. Very good.
I don't know if I can give you also the control. Otherwise, you can tell me.
I just tell you the next slide.
Okay, great. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you for the moderators, and thanks for the audience to participate. My name is Tom Zollner. I am the Secretary General for FarmTech Society. We are a sectorial industry representational organization based in Brussels. Our focus is controlled environment agriculture. What is that? This is all the things we are trying to do to protect the crop system from influences which could have an adverse effect. This is primarily a mature industry in the greenhouse sector, which has made great strides in the last 20 to 30 years, particularly here in Europe. And it starts from plastic tunnels to high-tech greenhouse under glass. But it also includes the more novel new type of controlled environment agriculture, namely what we call vertical farming. These are new models centering around controlling everything, including the influence of the sunlight, and also creating a kind of a vertical grow system to utilize more efficiency per square meter or hectare of agriculture production. This could also mean not only plant production in this kind of situation. There is quite successful already an onset of new types of growing of insects as alternative protein sources. This is a very interesting equation to look at from the perspective of sustainability of our animal feed story, as well as also the possibility of replacing proteins in the human consumption. Also existing for quite some time is the growing of mushrooms in vertical farm systems. This is also most mushrooms we consume today in Europe are grown in farms. They're not harvested in the forest. And this is a very rapidly developing new venue as well. And ultimately, what we also include in that is also the indoor fish farming called recirculating aquaculture. So without really further exploring our mission, I'm pleased to say that we are working together with a couple of operations here in Brussels who are basing these kind of principles on their commercial viability. And this is a little section in the not the center part, but just outside the center part of Brussels proper. Can you go to the next slide, please? Can you please go to the next slide?
Can you see it? It's now the next slide.
I don't see the next slide, no.
Isabella, you're sharing not the right screen. Then we just see the PowerPoint program now. So we have to leave share screen and then check this one. Yeah, there we are.
Now you see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, the reason for CEA is relatively oversimplified said is because we have adverse impact from various sources, namely climate change has made it very difficult for farmers to operate in a conventional way, meaning out in the field. And this has triggered a desire and also the need to really become protected from these kind of adverse impacts. This is particularly important when you look at regions where it is either too hot or too dry, or it has other reasons why the growing of crops is no longer possible. And namely, there's a lack of water perhaps, or there's too much water, etc. So this CEA has a triangle of very serious contributions and solutions to bring to the table. It's not only predictable, it is also highly sustainable because you can utilize a lot less decentralized agriculture activity. You can centralize it, you can utilize different sources of waste streams into the production, energy demand, etc. Also, the uptake of technology has also created an attraction in terms of providing career opportunities to people who cannot enter agriculture otherwise. I mean, these are all technical engineer professions, but this is also in the vocational level, advanced mechanical professions, all sorts of different profiles are possible in agriculture now, which are not really seen or known for. And the land competition in agriculture today is increasingly difficult. I mean, as we are building more and more, spreading into the agriculture primary land, there is less space available to grow our food sources. So CA can also make a very significant contribution because we are able to grow not necessarily in a soil or in an agriculture plot. We can also grow out of soil, which is a significant difference to the conventional way of growing food. And that has obviously the impact in the way we look at how a city can actually develop its own food security and food sovereignty in the form of growing food products in situations which normally are not favorable for this. This could be abandoned buildings. It would be particularly interesting in the peri-urban areas is rooftops of industrial sites. Also brownfields, polluted plots can be utilized to grow successfully these types of agriculture products. Next slide, please. Yep, thank you. So I'm zeroing in on an example which we have accompanied since 5 years. This is a little bit outside of the center, just behind the Gare du Midi. If you're familiar with Brussels, this is the big train station where all the high-speed trains arrive from all around Europe. Within walking distance, literally in 15 minutes, you will be in an area called abattoir. What is an abattoir? An abattoir is a slaughterhouse. This site has been in operation for 100+ years. And in the old days, the animals used to arrive by train and they were auctioned off in that big building in the center with the curved roof, and then walked to the site, killed and slaughtered and sold off to the city. It is also the site of a fresh market, not just on meats, but in general, any kind of produce is available there. It's considered one of the largest fresh markets in Europe. On a very good weekend with nice weather, there will be over 120,000 shoppers go there to purchase their food and grocery products. The site was slated to be redeveloped in the form of actually moving the whole operation out of the city. There was a big debate within the region of Brussels whether this would be an important thing, this would be the right thing to do. And it was decided, no, let's try to keep the site intact as a marketplace and upgrade the infrastructure so that in the future, this can be utilized continuously as a primary production site for urban agriculture that was mandated as part of the redevelopment plan, as well as retaining some of the features like the processing of these different types of products on site. It has also mandated to build a large capacity solar farm, electricity collection on the site as well. There are now at the moment three different operators, independent companies, who started to operate within the situation of the either abandoned older building or on the top of the new building developed for the site. Number one is BIGH. It's the first aquaponic rooftop farm of this size in Europe, in operation since 2018. They are growing in a greenhouse on the outside, on the rooftop garden, as well as in a fish system, various products. The second one is a vertical farm specialized in mushroom growing, which is housed in the basement underneath the building in the center. And they are been very successful developing and growing commercial mushrooms for the city at a large scale. And on one of the buildings on the upper left corner is housed Urban Harvest, which is a distinct vertical farm growing different types of plant products. What is interesting to understand here is that these operations are all carbon neutral productions, because they utilize the energy source either from the cooling of the farmer's market and the slaughterhouse as a heat source converted, and or they utilize the solar electric on-site production for their energy needs. Next slide, please. So here is a short rudimentary sketch of how the rooftop farm is actually utilizing the site in a interesting and circular way. You can see the different arrows pointing in and out, the different values created on the left side in the green arrow, and also the actual needs for this type of operation. And this is obviously a kind of an oversimplified story, but we can easily say that this type of use case of architecture in an urban setting, particularly in a peri-urban setting where there's larger industrial sites, is successful. It's been in operation since 2018, as I mentioned, and it is supplying a substantial amount of interesting fresh produce. These namely is herbs, different types of vine crops. These means like cucumbers, eggplants, tomatoes, as well as other root crops from the garden site into the different retail outlets, as well as into a stand which is situated below on the market space. Underneath, where you can see in the first floor, this is where the actual meat market is taking place right now. So it is a rooftop operation and utilizing directly the heat loop used in all the different coolers for those butchers downstairs, and supplying the heat for the fish system, as well as for the greenhouse. In terms of fish, there is a substantial amount of fresh fish coming out of the system, also a highly attractive proposition for a country like Belgium, who is very high on the list of per capita consumption of seafood. The interesting part about the combination of this fish system with rooftop or a growing of plant product is that you can utilize the nutrients from the fish waste, which is then extracted and processed and made available to the plants as a fertilizer. So overall, the balance sheet or the footprint of this operation is very interesting from a carbon perspective. It's also super interesting to understand that there are a multitude of different level interesting career options in this operation, which, you know, is a kind of a new attractive way of providing jobs in an urban, peri-urban setting, which is a very primary target, particularly also during the pandemic, where certain industries are pivoting out of growth into decline and need to find new applications. So for instance, if you have been an engineer working for Airbus and you thought you had a very safe career, you can now apply for a job at a farm like this, and you find work there, because the technical demands of operating and designing and maintaining a farm system like that under controlled environment agriculture is requiring the same principles as you would use in a profession like aerospace. Next slide, please. So what are we seeing in terms of challenge over the last 3 years in this site? Obviously, it is, you know, been a struggle to demonstrate a commercial viability, because the scale is not at the scale that you can actually compete with produce grown in conventional ways. The application of a €1 per kilogram tomatoes in the farmers market below does not substantially support an operation like the rooftop greenhouse. And it is also not recognized for its value because it is not only grown within the parameter and doesn't need to be trucked, it is also a super clean and super nutritious product. And this is where FarmTech Society comes in as a sectorial representation. We have identified this challenge, and we see also in the realms of, let's say, Brussels as a region who has been spending quite a lot of resources and efforts in developing urban agriculture as a sector, that there's no true evaluation and there's no true economic map of all the activities as a total. And in other words, we still are largely invisible on all the benefits an operation such as Anderlecht could facilitate to an understanding how the economic benefits would actually work and how the scalability of a project like that could really change the way urban municipalities or urban planners can understand how this would benefit and where to plan and implement these operations. There's also a big divide between the rural and the urban communities. Today, as we all know, agriculture is a domain of rural communities. It's a very highly regulated activity. Agriculture is one of the most regulated sectors we can have, rightly so. So these kinds of regulations do not apply to peri-urban or urban situations. It just does not exist because this is a relatively new use case. So it's paramount importance to start focusing on how to develop sets of data and economic understanding about this activity, and calculate a total balance sheet on, let's say, what the city of Brussels is producing on an annual basis, what the social benefits are, what the environmental benefits would be, and also how this could actually scale in terms of projection. It is obviously very important that the generation of this data set is done in a correct way, because a lot of these startups are very hesitant to share data because that's one part of their IP they develop and they use to raise funding for their own purposes. However, we are seeing increased amount of interest and sort of participatory agreement that this needs to be formulated as a common strategy, and also try to create a better recognition and a visibility for the advantages of this type of operation and product in agriculture regulation. Ultimately, the regulators need data in order to really develop a regulation around it. Urban planners need data to understand better how to implement this. And from a consumer point of view, it will be also super important to really understand a sustainability footprint of a product like that and have it recognizably differentiated in the marketplace. With that, I'm going to close and hand over to Tara and Jan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much. It's very interesting presentation. I don't have now the slides of Tara.
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Okay, let me post this. Okay.
There we are.
Yes.
Okay, and do you see it in presentation mode? Yeah, and now in presentation mode. Yeah.
Yes.
So good morning, everyone. So what I'd like to do is add a little bit to Thomas's presentation by explaining also how the data that we gather from this vertical farm and what it can actually mean for cities to become food producing cities. My name is Tera Roling. I work for a foundation that's the Sustainable Urban Delta. And this Sustainable Urban Delta Foundation was established by Priva. As a company, Priva is involved in greenhouse building already since 60 years ago. But Priva, as a company that provides control systems for a optimum climate in greenhouses or in indoor or vertical farms, has been involved in the development of vertical farming since the beginning of it. So we know a lot about this, what vertical farm, what it can do, how much you can produce, and then as a foundation, then the Sustainable Urban Delta is focusing on making it insightful, making it clear to cities above all what a application of vertical farming, of controlled environmental agriculture, what it can mean to a city and how you can maximize the food production in your city. And this is what I want to add briefly to Thomas's presentation, because I don't know how much time we really have left, but I want to highlight that the research that the Sustainable Urban Delta Foundation has been doing for several cities, what actually the main learnings have been for us up till now. Because we're talking here about vertical farming, but for cities to have a city planning that includes food production, which is historically was not a main focus point of city governments, but actually with the increased urbanization and the need for food to feed a growing population of cities, actually food planning should be a major part of city planning. And then this food planning, of course, includes vertical farming, but it's also about this green belts around the city that is needed to feed the city. And also this green belt is the area where more efficient use of agricultural land should be also on the agenda, should also be the main topic. These are a few pictures of Rotterdam, which is in the right bottom part, compared to, for instance, London, which is the left upper part. It shows the level of self-sufficiency of the city. So red means that that part of the city is not self-sufficient, of almost non-existent level of self-sufficiency when it comes to food production. You can see in the upper left part example of London, how much of a green belt is needed there to feed the city of London. This is a research actually from Wageningen about self-sufficiency. And it's just, I'm using this as an example to prove how important it is to also have an overall plan for this food production for cities, so that you can both use your green belts with a higher efficiency of the available agricultural land, like the Westland example where we're located as a company, as Priva, we're located in the Westland area, which is basically the food producing belt around cities like The Hague and Rotterdam. Sorry, this is the next slide already. So how to use the efficient use of this green belt combined with efficient use of available space in cities itself. So this is the brownfields also that Thomas also mentioned. There is a lot of, and I'll just flip through these research that we've been doing as a Sustainable Urban Delta Foundation. I'll flip through it very quickly, but I just want to make the point that From research that we've been doing, and a lot of data is available actually from cities in the USA, research has shown that using brownfield sites, so undeveloped land or deserted areas in the cities itself, if you make a proper use of that to do, then your vertical farming or your rooftop farming or just open field farming, our calculations have shown that using that kind of available land would greatly and positively influence the potential of cities to be self-sufficient when it comes to food production. And this is an example, a calculation for New York, that actually 73.8% of, and then I'm talking about nutritious food. So I'm not talking about calories, but about nutrition. So that's the veggies and the herbs. 73.8% can already be produced in the cities itself. Another example is Detroit, where there's so much deserted buildings, factories, all kinds of brownfields, that if that kind of space would be used, self-sufficiency would be like almost 300%. So that's the point that I wanted to make. In addition, then to Thomas, who explained a little bit about the background. And so what I wanted to share is the potential that lies in the proper use of both the urban farming and maybe the controlled environment agriculture. And then added to that, Thomas mentioned it in his slides as well, there's even more additional value when you then get to talk about circular solutions, using waste energy, using waste water, using all kinds of waste, which is actually, when it comes to food production, that can serve then also as a big catalyzer for implementing these kind of circular or integrated solutions. I think I'll leave it to that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tara. Again, very interesting presentation, and it combines and integrates also the one that we had from Thomas before. So thank you very much. If I'm correct, we don't have any more presentation. So maybe we can ask the audience if there are any questions about what we have heard so far.
Yeah, I would say questions, comments, if anybody would like to share some experience, since we are not having this third presentation, we have a space of opportunity that we can use in order to share other ideas or anything that you might want to share with the group. And we can see a nice flow in the chat where more people is introducing and sharing experiences and ideas.
I can see a comment and a question in the chat from Silvio Caputo from the University of Kent. Maybe he can open his microphone. Or otherwise, I can also read it, and it's for Thomas. Silvio says that he's working with the University of Washington in a study on nutrient recovery, particularly on phosphorus in aquaponics. And in the study, the phosphorus nutrient recovery was identified as an opportunity for higher environmental efficiency and economic return, not sufficiently explored in the aquaponic industry. So the question is nutrient recovery included in the big farm in Bruxelles?
Yes, I'm sorry that wasn't clear. Yes, it is an integrated recovery on the nutrients, although the amount of nutrients required for plant products are not always available just exclusively from the recovery from the fish waste. But as a base load, it works extremely well. It's demonstrated there now in the last 3 years, and these are also commercial applications which are available in a number of systems across the world. The aim is, of course, to make this 100% circular, and you can also understand that the nutrient recovery is also based on what the fish eat. So the input of the feed will also determine what kind of nutrients you end up actually being able to recover. So the vulnerability on a fish system today is still that the input in the fish system is based on fish oil, which is the common fish feed today. I mean, it's transforming because of the onset of using, let's say, insect-based proteins, which is a natural diet for fish in many cases. That could replace that, and then remains to be seen how much of the nutrients are really generated also with this insect fish feed. There is a lot of leaps to be made on that end. Still, we're really on the early stages. I know that the European Union is trying very hard to foster this kind of development. Unfortunately, we haven't really seen that many real successful commercial applications. I think in the US, there's a lot more. We have also Jan Wester on the call, who is an expert on this, because he started this type of testing with Priva, much earlier than most of us have started thinking about it. Maybe you can say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for your answer. Are there any other comments or question or doubts from the audience? You can write in the chat or.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in a car and it's very noisy, so I'm happy to switch off the microphone and post a comment if that is the case.
Yeah.
Shall I go on?
Yes, and then maybe we can talk and restitute it to the audience. Yes.
Yes, I posted that comment on phosphorus recovery, nutrient recovery, and I just wanted to say, ask another question to Thomas. In that study, we interviewed a number of farmers in the US. Well, I didn't. The University of Washington did. And yes, the aquaponics industry is much more developed in the US and not sufficiently developed in Europe, at least until now. But one of the things that came out from the interviews to, I think, 30 to 40 aquaponic industries, I can't remember the number, is that there's the competition for one of the challenges for aquaponics industries, especially medium-sized industry farms, is that they're not competitive with with aquaculture industry. So the fish they produce cannot be sold at a higher value, and aquaculture industries are much more developed and efficient. So there's a big challenge for an economic model that works for the aquaponic industry. And I wanted to know if Thomas had any consideration on that.
Yes, that's a very good observation. Again, the problem lies in the invisibility of the advantages of the product, because a fish today is just sold as a fish and not in a category like organic or like what I would consider in the future. We may want to think about the category called carbon neutral products, right? This is a big interest of consumers to understand that, but there's no information identifying a fish when you buy it in the store if it is sustainable or not. I mean, there are obviously labels and there are efforts to kind of inform a consumer, but I can say that these are very limited. It's for a very small consumer group, mainly high wealthy income groups, who pay attention to that, because most people, when they buy fish, they want to buy cheap fish. and they don't really care where it's come from. They don't really care if it is coming from a polluted fish farm, if it is from an overfished fisheries, etc. And this is again the same challenge as I try to address for the overall space of controlled environment agriculture and urban agriculture. We need to really identify the advantages by collecting data, by establishing a benchmarking system and also establishing standards, how to measure things and how to demonstrate the advantages in a measurable data science-based way. And with that data set, one could then really make a claim to have a different product in the marketplace.
Thank you, Thomas. I see another question in the chat from Jacopo. Should I read it, Jacopo, or do you want to make it yourself?
No, please go ahead. I'll do it. I can do it. Thank you very much. I mean, I heard a lot about talks and discussions about decarbonization, and especially when we see companies in indoor and urban environments claiming about their higher sustainability, which of course we trust. But I would really like to see from a municipal point of view, what is the position in terms of decarbonization and carbon accounting. As I mean, while we have urban farms that are highly demanding in terms of energy, so with a potential high CO2 emission factor, and it would be good how this is taken into account by municipalities. And because it's understandable the point of the company where they say compared to the same product in the field, we are less pollutant. But when I look at it from the municipal point of view, well, then it basically factors in all the emissions and it creates a possible shortcut in the carbon accounting of the city itself. Let me know if the question is clear, because it's...
Yeah. Can I chime in, Jacopo?
Please, of course.
Yeah. Well, this is Jan Westra from Priva and the Sustainable Urban Delta. I want to relate to a project that Wageningen University is doing with TU Delft, so Delft University of Technology. And especially the Faculty of Architecture is looking into this specific aspect. So how can we build a vertical farm in its surroundings, and how do we relate all the carbon flows, energy flows, the waste? How can we all tie it together and see what goes in, what goes out, and what would be the best way to build this in an urban area one way or another? So we are not there yet, or they, I must say, the researchers, but there was already a PhD student who works at Wageningen now, Luc Gramans, who did research on this one. And now someone else is doing the next phase in this specific type of research. So I will put the link to the thesis of Luc in the chat after my talk. But it's always the sort of in between indeed. And we as Priva look, or as a Sustainable Urban Delta, always look for what are the waste streams, just like Thomas said for abattoir, that we can use for growing food. Otherwise it goes to waste, and how can we use that at least? And then the discussion starts like in the Westland area for where do the carbon credits come, where the grower uses carbon dioxide from a refinery. Do the carbon credits go to the grower because he's not burning gas, or to the refinery because they are not polluting? That's the next phase, but that's more a political discussion, I think. So there's research going on for how can we do it, and how are there better ways to do it, because otherwise it does make sense indeed. You're perfectly right. And of course there's a research, and I want to start that, for what's the offset from shipping leafy greens by truck from Salinas all the way to the New York City area compared to growing it on the rooftop. But that the offset is not there yet, so to say. So there's more to be done in this specific field.
Can I chime in as well?
Please, Tom.
Yes, I think this is a trajectory which is obviously also hampered again by data. I mean, this is the same problem, the same conundrum as everybody has. There's not enough good data for scientists to really actually come up with a reliable way of comparing these production methods to what we've done in conventional ways. What I can say is what's interesting, and this is not empirical, we can also get back about this type of figuring. In the abattoir scenario, where there's quite a large a set of solar panels on the rooftops of all this 21 hectare site, the actual use case for this renewable energy collection in a sunny day would be normally that you feed it in the grid and you get a price for it, right? Now, if you have a use on site, which is a recurring use, like a vertical farm or like a greenhouse or like a fish system, you have a customer on site which can utilize this to an extent which is highly attractive to an operator of these renewable energies. And what I call this is kind of like an integrative green infrastructure approach, which means that a renewable energy provider, which has either too much sunlight or not enough sunlight, and it has to be at the mercy of the actual price on the grid to make money with, would always love to have a partner on site to really be able to sell this electricity at a certain cost, which is better than the cost it gets from the grid when there's too much there, and also lower at the cost of the operators when they would have to buy from the grid. So this is an interesting new way of looking at it, that a renewable green energy infrastructure could benefit in an urban municipal setting from the fact that there is an integrated food production of multiple operations integrated in a cluster to be a customer and also a balancer of your energy equation. I'd be happy to find out more about this, because this solar park approach in abattoir is the latest edition that was developed later than when these operators started to produce their food products on it. But I think there is already interesting data to compare what it would mean if they would have sold all the electricity back into the grid, or if they actually made it available to the operators at a specific discounted price and get a stable income from that end. Thank you.
Thank you again, Thomas. I don't know if there are other comments on this aspect raised by Jacopo. We have 5 minutes left in the agenda. I can see there is also another question on from Victoire. And he asks how municipalities are supporting the different initiatives through legislation and or urban agricultural strategy, for example, through incentives. I don't know if Victoire is here and wants to add something.
No, thank you very much. That was clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
so is there anyone from municipalities who's willing to reply to this?
Well, this is Samir.
Yeah.
Samir Amgar of the municipality of Lansingerland in the Netherlands. It's a city between Rotterdam and The Hague, also where Thera just mentioned Westland, it's that area. And we support the European Food E project, what Isabella just mentioned. And we do it because we have in our area high-tech greenhouses. We try to make a connection with also the citizens of our area so that they can go in the future and work in this field. And because of the importance, we also support the entrepreneurs in our area. So if there are innovations from the Wageningen University, for example, or from the entrepreneurs, we try to help them and advise them from the municipality. And that's special because we've got also other economic clusters in our municipality. We don't do it for them, but we see the importance of this area, not only for our region or Netherlands of the world. And that's why we help them. So we try to help the entrepreneurs with permits and support them to go for more innovations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samir. And I can confirm, I mean, I work for Wageningen University and Research, so we are a research institute, and there is a strict collaboration with the municipality and with entrepreneurs. So it's kind of triangle there. I'm looking if there are any other questions on the chat. Okay, there are many. So I don't know if, Giuseppina, if you had time to read through them. Is there something else we can
I think
address?
that there is one from Alexander Larman from Amsterdam Institute, and he said that they are setting up urban farming projects in the city of Amsterdam. And for us, it's important to really connect with citizens to understand their needs. He asked, what are the experiences here and how did you cope with that? So experiences in citizen involvement in urban agriculture or vertical farming projects. I don't know if someone would like to share.
I see Jacopo, he raised his hand.
Just for
Jacopo?
an additional question, more than to answer to this. So,
okay.
No, once this question from Giuseppina is answered, and there is no other question from the floor, I'd like to have another follow-up question on decarbonization. Thank you.
Yeah. So any inputs on how to connect the citizens and understand their needs, or any experiences from municipalities or also other organizations?
Well, again, if I'm allowed, from Lansingerland in the Netherlands, it's a good question. We try to raise the conscience of food in our community. So we do it with festivals. So because of COVID now it's not possible, but if we are allowed again, we try to do once a year a festival where we show all our innovative greenhouses. As well, there's a department of the Wageningen University in our municipality. There is also a vertical farm, and we try to bring all the citizens in there to tell the story about how we cultivate food so that we raise their conscience. Yes, thank you.
Perhaps I can comment a little bit on the question that I had. I was also wondering, because when we talk about urban farming, it's more like we produce the food, but we don't know exactly for who we are producing it. And if you look at the city of Amsterdam and Rotterdam, it's the same. You have about 180, 190 different cultures, all have their own appreciation for food. And we want to turn it around, actually. We want to know what their need is and to know what type of urban farming projects do we have to set up to produce the right things for their needs. So I was wondering whether there are experience for that. So not only to have a push, but also to get a pull.
I can say a little bit about the abattoir experience. Abattoir market is very ethnic driven market, and obviously the interesting part about that ethnic background on the marketplace is that people will shop for things which are generally viewed as low cost and low income type of purchase. However, there is a cultural background in a number of strong ethnic representation in these markets, which are appreciating fresh produce, for instance. I'm referring to products they need to have in order to cook on a daily basis, which is for them super important. And they're actually shown over and over again that their willingness to pay for high quality fresh produce produced on for the market where they shop, they will value it with a much higher willingness to pay extra for that than, for instance, an average, a Western consumer who is always shopping just for the cheapest. And so this provides obviously a very interesting opportunity for growers who specialize not necessarily in understanding what the market wants, but they could evaluate their product base and adjust it to the needs of those communities to service them. This has actually been a very interesting development in urban market, fresh market developments in the US, where it's been proven that, if you are opening today a fresh market, you will service, quite a lot of different demographics. But initially, back 10, 15 years ago, they were servicing only the ethnic community because they were interested in the fresh produce. And they actually were the initial drivers to the growth of fresh markets on a large scale.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you again. I think we have time for just one last question. I don't know, Jacopo, if you want to make your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Isabella.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to stress more on the decarbonization aspect, and I would really like to hear also from the companies that are today here. I see Aquaponics, I see iFarms and Pledge and others. I mean, would there be a potential, in addition to produce food, which is what they are actually doing in a very innovative way, but also to support, again, the carbon accounting of municipalities in supporting the removal from the atmosphere of CO2 as it's currently being experimented in traditional controlled environment agriculture, for example, in Netherlands and other high-ranking CEA countries. Over to you, colleagues. Thank you. Nobody?
Okay, this is Timo from iFarm. So
hi, Timo. Welcome.
So we have been, let's say, planning for a couple of projects for, extracting CO2 from the air, especially in connection with aquaponics, because there the fish is producing much more or quite substantial amounts of CO2. So extracting that from the fish environment and using that in the vertical farm side. But so far, actually, the challenge has been that since most of these operators are companies working as a business, it's much cheaper for them to just buy industrial CO2 gas in containers and use that, and just let the fish CO2 go, more or less. So right now it's not financially feasible for let's say our customers to pursue further on that one. However, there is a very interesting, let's say, project starting now in Austria, in Vienna, called farmnow.eu, which is a something that the city of Vienna is actually somehow also supporting, where they are using one old car dealership building to build a let's say urban farming exhibition center, where also the citizens can rent their own growing space from a bigger farm. So it's a bit like Airbnb for vertical farming. And in that project, they will do very tedious studies about the sustainability and the carbon footprint and everything. So they really are putting a lot of effort behind that one. So farmnow.eu is the site if you want to go and see it. So that's something interesting that we are at least observing.
No, interesting. That's exactly the aspects that we're also interested in understanding. Of course, the perspective of the companies investing millions of dollars is the utmost relevant also. Thank you very much. I think, Isabella, unless there is some other answers to my question, there is also a question from Giuseppe Carlo Modarelli.
Yeah, I see there is more than one question, but I think we are already out of time.
So probably we need to close this very live discussion. I think that we can continue to use the chat to share ideas and questions that can be then answered also via email or with any other mean. And so thanks to everybody for the contributions and for sharing your ideas and for your time. And we are going to have a very short break, and we are going to convene back in 10 minutes in the main room. So thanks again to everybody, and see you in a short while in the main room.
And please take the time to answer the Mentimeter if you want. It's not mandatory, of course. And feel free to use the room to chat until it will be closed in a few minutes. Over, and see you in plenary. Thank you very much.